Hello everyone, my name is Jun Lee, and welcome back to this week's episode of English Pop. As you can see, Josh isn't here with me right now, but don't worry, he's going to be popping up later on in our episode and actually reporting from China. Now today's title is going to be Compass Publishing's new course book, Treehouse. But for today's episode, we have a special treat for you guys. We actually have the author of Treehouse here today, and we're going to be talking to him about the background, the purpose, and the content development behind it too. Before we actually get to our guest speaker, let's go ahead and talk about what Treehouse is and what it's about. Treehouse is a 3-level course book series for very young learners. Learners join our characters, Monty, Anna, and Louie, in a different adventure for each unit. Learners are engaged through a variety of fun and compelling activities to help each unit's story progress. The characters, adventures, and activities help develop skills with vocabulary, foundational grammar structures, colors, shapes, phonics, numbers, values, and cross-curricular content. Welcome back, everyone. Here now we have the author, Mr. Lucas Foster of the Treehouse series. Hello, Lucas. Thank you for joining us on English Pop. Today we appreciate your time and effort.
Thanks for having me.
The good part of actually having an author actually come onto these types of series is that we get a more in-depth background information, knowledge about the content itself, and most importantly, the purpose and the methods that are being taught in the series itself. With an academic course book like Treehouse, there are a lot of different teaching methodologies and different paradigms, one actually being self-learning. Now, for many of our users, self-learning isn't a popular or well-known term or phrase. Would you mind explaining what self-learning is and why it's effective with this series?
Sure. Basically what self-learning is just a clever, creative way to disguise the learning that's going on with the student. So there's different tools that teachers can use to employ self-learning, such as games, songs, and different types of activities. Basically, what self-learning does is masks the learning so that the student is more focused on the activity itself, and then the learning sort of going on in the background. And the reason why we use self-learning is because it's effective. Students learn best when they're activated and engaged in the content. I mean, if you think back to when you were a student, some of the classes that you probably learned the most from or remember the most were the most fun and interesting. So that's the reason why we employed self-learning in Treehouse.
Well, Lucas, that actually sounds pretty cool. Having the teacher hide all the hard parts of the class and making it more fun and more interactive for the students. How is the self-learning process actually being represented in the Treehouse series then?
Well, there are a number of different ways that we implemented self-learning into the Treehouse series. First of all, each unit is structured like a story. So instead of dry pages where students are just memorizing vocabulary words and other things like that, they listen to a character who's telling them a story, and then students are invited to participate in that story. So the students are more focused on the story itself and participating in that story than just simply memorizing language that they're supposed to learn. And another way that self-learning is implemented into Treehouse, and I think is really, really fun, is the songs and the chants. And a lot of songs and chants, quite frankly, for ELT books can get a little annoying after just listening for a few times. And I know adults quickly get tired of hearing the same songs over and over again, and eventually the children do too. So we really tried to make an effort to make genuinely good music with the series. And as I've traveled around the world and promoted the book and actually seen it used in classrooms, I think we accomplished that. So the music is another way that self-learning is implemented into the series. And on top of all the great songs, there's also another way that we implemented self-learning, and that's the animated TPR dance videos that go along with the songs and chants. Students get instantly engaged by the animation, and So they have to invest some time into learning the dances because if it's too simple, then the student learns the dance too quickly, then they just move along to the next one. So as they spend time learning the dances, they're also, again, learning that language in the background. But there are some limitations to the amount of stealth learning that we can kind of embed into the series. So in order to help the teacher who actually implements stealth learning into the classroom, there are a 4-page section in the teacher's guide that has a list of about 20 different games and activities that the teachers can use to implement stealth learning into the classroom themselves and make that experience even greater for the students.
You just mentioned the characters that are actually belonging to Treehouse series. We have Louis, Monty, and Anna. Can you please tell us where you actually got them from and where you actually created these characters from?
Well, I'm a very creative person, and the characters came from my imagination, and they're based on friends of mine that I remember from my childhood. So I altered their names a little bit, but that's basically it. And I think the characters are really important so that the students have kind of a familiar face and a friend that they can study together with, and so that's what makes the characters effective, and that's why I put a lot of effort into trying to create really good characters for the series.
Another approach that we actually see visible in the Treehouse series is going to be the communicative approach. Would you mind sharing what that approach is and what the base is about?
Sure. So the communicative language approach is an approach to language teaching that emphasizes interaction as a method of instruction as well as the learning objective. So basically, instead of learning words and then learning how to use them, you learn words by learning how they're used.
So how is the communicative approach being used in Treehouse?
Students learn words by learning how they're used in context. That's part of the communicative approach. So the context that's given in Treehouse is through the story. So as we just discussed, there are the 3 characters who students come to know and kind of learn to love throughout the series. So this helps to set up the context in the beginning of the story, at the beginning of the unit. And basically, one of the 3 characters explains the setting. They explain the plot of the story, and then they go over those things in the story box. This explanation for the students, plus the context that's communicated through the design and the very colorful illustrations, it helps to enrich the learning experience for the students and again provide that context, that extra context. And for example, in one of the units there are farm animals, but students don't just learn the words, they don't just learn the word horse, for example. They also learn that horses live on farms and that they live in barns, and they can categorize those animals as farm animals. So there's a whole entire context that's provided for the students that wouldn't be there if they're just simply memorizing English words. So that's one way that the communicative language learning approach is provided in Treehouse. And I'll give you another example. In Unit 5 of Book 1, students learn body part vocabulary, which is very typical, very easy. These students are self-centered, they can remember easily. But then they learn sports vocabulary, and the unit is about basketball. So they learn body part vocabulary, they learn sports vocabulary, and then they learn how to say something like, I can throw a ball with my arms. And the story in that unit is about robots learning to play basketball. And the role of the student is that they need to teach those robots how to play basketball. So the students have to learn how to say, throw the ball with your arms. So the context of the story comes together and helps to give the language that the students are learning more value and meaning. And so that's one way, another way that we've implemented the communicative language learning approach in Treehouse.
Now, Lucas, if you don't mind, we have Josh in China with a few teachers that have some questions about the Treehouse series.
Hello, Lucas and June. It's me, Joshua, here in China, where we've had a very successful teacher training session for Treehouse in Nanjing. And one of the teachers today in the audience, Tommy here, had a question for Lucas about Treehouse.
Yep. I have been using Treehouse for a month, and I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
What's the way that I can use books more effectively?
Okay, how can he use his books more effectively in class? Lucas, can you help us out with that one?
That's a good question, and I've heard that question a lot. There are a lot of opportunities in Treehouse to preview and review the language that's learned, and we set it up that way on purpose. And if the language that is learned isn't recalled in the mind, then the students will forget. So I encourage teachers to look ahead to units that they're going to study soon, and also look back at units that they've studied recently and preview language that they're going to learn and review language wherever possible that they've studied recently. And it's okay to be creative in the way that you do this. The important thing is that you get the students to preview and review the language that's in the units.
Thanks a lot, Lucas. Great answer to the question. We have another teacher here who has another question about Treehouse. And what was your question?
How can I increase my students' real-world knowledge?
How can I increase my students' real-world knowledge? Lucas, can you answer that for us, please?
Yeah, that's a good question too. Treehouse is designed to be very fun for the learners and for them to use their imagination, but it is also important for the students to apply the language that they learn and the content that they learn in Treehouse to the real world and their real life. And so at the end of each unit, there's a clue section and a value section, and both are related to and expand on the content in the story. And this is another area where teachers can and should be creative. They can use these pages to break down fun parts of the story in Treehouse and teach them about the world that they're living in the clue section. And then there are a lot of helpful suggestions in the teacher's guide about how to do this. You can bring things into the classroom to provide real-world examples. So I would suggest looking at the teacher's guide for some suggestions about how to do that. And another really important thing in the early development of children is their ability to understand how to appropriately think and behave in a social setting. I had a lot of experience with this when I was teaching, and I tried to implement values into this series that I thought were very valuable and practical to the developmental needs of the students and things that they really needed to learn.
Thanks a lot, Lucas, for answering the teacher's questions here. You really helped them out. Of course, we'll have a lot more questions for you probably later. So we'll see you next time. And everybody else, thank you so much for joining English Pop, and we'll see you next time right here.
Well, it looks like we got a lot of questions answered today. We got a lot of information on Treehouse, the components of it, how it's actually going to be used, and the purpose behind it too. We do appreciate your time. Before you actually do leave, Lucas, do you have any final thoughts or anything you want to say to our users?
As a former teacher myself, I wanted to create a course book that students would really enjoy and learn a lot from. The whole concept of the series is for students to enjoy learning and to use their imagination, because that's what the little ones do best. And I encourage teachers to also use their imagination while using Treehouse and to have fun with it. That's the most important thing that I think people should remember As I mentioned earlier, students learn best when they're having fun, and students look up to their teachers in so many different ways. And I think that if the teacher is having fun and the students see that, and the teachers create a creative and fun environment for the students, that's the best way that everyone can enjoy and learn from the Treehouse series. So.
Great, we appreciate your time. We want to say thank you to Lucas, of course, for joining us for English Pop series. We also want to say thank you to Josh and our Chinese teachers and users. If you are interested in more of an extensive walkthrough of the Treehouse series, you can find that at the link below. And also, if you find it through our link, through our Compass Publishing website, you can see all the components, teachers' resources, and digital components that go along with it too. Once again, thanks for your time, we appreciate it, and thanks for joining us again on English Pop. Hello everyone, I'm Jun Lee.
I'm Joshua Johnson.
And we'd like to thank you for spending your time with us watching our English Pop channel. If you like what you saw, go ahead and give us a like or subscribe to our channel.
And please leave your comments below and let us know what you think. And for all our users in China, please visit our YouTube channel. Well, thanks again for your time, and we'll see you again here next time on English Pop.
Have a good day.